Sometimes, people don't just disappear, they vanish in ways that defy all logic. Tonight, we're looking at 4 real cases of missing people, each one more unsettling than the last. A man who walked into a crowded bar under surveillance, and never walked out. A young nursing student who crashed her car on a lonely road, and vanished minutes later. A girl who packed her backpack and walked into the night, never to return. And a man who made one final 911 call in terror, before disappearing forever. These aren't ghost stories. They're real and they remain unsolved. For disappearances, for families left with nothing but questions. Our first case begins in 2006, with a young man named Brian Schaefer. What if you walked into a bar, and never walked out? Every door is covered by cameras. Every angle is recorded. And yet, you vanish into thin air. This isn't fiction, it's the real-life case of 27-year-old Brian Schaefer. Brian was a second-year medical student at Ohio State University. Friends say he was charismatic, funny, and deeply in love with his girlfriend, Alexis. But Brian's life wasn't without pain. Just weeks earlier, his mother had passed away from cancer, leaving him devastated. On April 1, 2006, the start of spring break, Brian decided to go out with friends and blow off steam. That night, Brian and a friend bar hopped before ending up at a local hotspot, the Ugly Tuna Saloon. Security cameras captured Brian entering around 1:15 a.m. with his friend. Later, footage shows him stepping outside and chatting with 2 women. He then turned back toward the bar entrance, and that's the last time anyone ever saw him. When the bar closed, friends assumed Brian had gone home. But he never showed. The next day, Alexis called repeatedly. No answer. Brian even missed their planned flight to Miami, a trip he had been excited about. Police reviewed hours of surveillance footage. Cameras covered every exit. Brian is seen going in, but never coming out. No footage shows him leaving with friends, slipping away, or even in disguise. It's as if the building swallowed him whole. The bar was searched top to bottom. Basements, construction areas, even sewer lines nearby. Nothing. No sign of Brian. His apartment remained untouched. Bank accounts, credit cards, and his cell phone, silent. People over the years have come up with some theories. Did an accident happen inside the bar? Did Brian fall into a construction hole or hidden space? Searches showed nothing. Did grief push him to run away? But he was making future plans, including proposing to Alexis. Was Brian killed in or near the bar and secretly removed? If so, how did no one notice? Or what if he slipped past the cameras? Police say it's nearly impossible, but many cling to this theory. What if Brian Schaefer is still alive somewhere? What if he staged a perfect vanishing act? Or what if the cameras aren't telling the full story? Brian's father never stopped searching until his death in 2008. His girlfriend, Alexis, has never given up hope. Nearly 2 decades later, there are still no clues. Just a man who walked into a bar, and never walked out. One night. One building. And a mystery that refuses to be solved. Brian Schaefer's disappearance remains one of the most baffling vanishing acts ever caught on camera. But just 2 years earlier, another case left investigators just as confused. This time, a young woman crashed her car on a snowy road, and disappeared before help could even arrive. She emailed her professors, saying there was a family emergency. But there wasn't. Hours later, her car was found crashed on a rural road. Witnesses saw her alive, and then she was gone. This is the haunting disappearance of 21-year-old Maura Murray. Maura was a nursing student at UMass Amherst. She was athletic, intelligent, and loved by her family. But behind the scenes, Maura was struggling: academic stress, a recent breakup, and a few disciplinary incidents at school. On February 9, 2004, Maura suddenly packed her car with clothes, textbooks, and alcohol. She emailed her professors, claiming a family emergency, then hit the road. Destination? Unknown. At 7:30 p.m., Maura crashed her Saturn on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. A passing bus driver stopped to help. Maura insisted she was fine, claiming she had already called AAA. But she hadn't. He drove off, but within 10 minutes, police arrived. Her car was locked, airbags deployed, and Maura was gone. Her belongings were inside the car: schoolwork, liquor, and personal items. But no purse, no phone activity, no credit card use after that night. Authorities launched a massive search. Dogs followed her scent for about 100 yards into the woods, then it stopped cold. Helicopters, volunteers, cadaver dogs scoured the area. Not a single trace was found. Maura's family was blindsided. Why was she in New Hampshire at all? And why vanish after a simple crash? Over the years, many people have questions on what actually happened that evening. But most people, from investigations released concerning the case, suggested that Maura locked her car. Left due to the fact there was opened wine in her car and was picked up by a stranger who she assumed was kind and would help her. Others assumed something darker. What if Maura had been meeting someone? What if the crash was just the start of a darker plan? Nearly 20 years later, Maura Murray's case is one of the internet's most studied mysteries. Forums, podcasts, and documentaries endlessly debate what happened that night. But her family is still left without answers. One crash. One disappearance. And a mystery that may never be solved. Maura's case sparked endless debates online, yet no answers have ever been found. But our next story is even more heartbreaking, because this time, the missing person wasn't an adult. A girl who left home in the middle of the night, and walked straight into a storm. On Valentine's Day, 2000, a young girl packed her backpack and slipped out of her home at 4 a.m. Several motorists saw her walking along the highway in the pouring rain. Moments later, she vanished. This is the heartbreaking case of Asha Degree. Asha lived with her parents and brother in Shelby, North Carolina. Her family was close-knit and protective. Asha was described as shy but determined, with good grades and a love for basketball. On February 13, a storm knocked out the power in her neighborhood. The next morning, at 4 a.m., Asha's parents checked on her. She was in bed. But an hour later, she was gone. Two motorists saw Asha walking along Highway 18, carrying a backpack. One driver turned around to check, but she had vanished into the woods. When her parents discovered her missing, panic set in. Police launched a massive search. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers scoured the area. But Asha was gone. A year later, a shocking discovery: Asha's backpack was found buried in plastic bags, 30 miles away. Inside were her belongings, clothes, pencils, and a Mickey Mouse book that wasn't hers. Why did Asha leave home in the middle of the night? Some speculate she ran away after a basketball game loss or frustration at home. But nothing suggested she was unhappy. FBI and local police suspect she was lured. But by who? And how did they convince her to leave so early in the morning? What if Asha left willingly, believing she was heading towards something safe, only to walk into danger? 25 years later, Asha Degree's disappearance remains unsolved. Every Valentine's Day, her family renews their plea for answers. The FBI still asks for tips. And the question remains, why did such a young girl step into the storm that night, and where did she go? She was just a child. A walk into the night that never ended. Asha's family still searches for answers, clinging to hope after decades of silence. But sometimes, the missing leave behind something chilling. Our final case begins with a 911 call, a desperate voice begging for help. And then, nothing. Imagine being on the phone with your child. You can hear their footsteps crunching in the night as you guide them home. Then suddenly, you hear them cry out, "Oh, SHT!" Asterisk, and the line goes dead. That was the last anyone ever heard from 19-year-old Brandon Swanson. To this day, he's never been found. Brandon Victor Swanson was 19 years old, from the small town of Marshall, Minnesota. Friends described him as bright, responsible, and easygoing. He had just finished his first year at Minnesota West Community and Technical College, studying wind energy technology. On May 14, 2008, he attended a small gathering to celebrate the end of the semester. He wasn't drunk, just in good spirits. When the party wound down, Brandon got into his green Chevy Lumina and headed for home. It should have been a simple 30-minute drive. But sometime after midnight, things went wrong. Brandon's car slipped into a ditch along a gravel road near Taunton, Minnesota. It wasn't damaged, and he wasn't hurt, but the wheels were stuck. So, at 1:54 a.m., Brandon called his parents for help. He told them not to worry. He was calm, explaining he could see lights from a nearby town and would walk toward them while his parents came to get him. For the next 47 minutes, they stayed on the phone as he walked along dirt roads and fields, describing fences, streams, and gravel crunching beneath his feet. His parents drove around trying to spot him, but couldn't find him. Then, just before 2:30 a.m., Brandon suddenly said, "Oh, shit." Asterisk, the call went silent. His parents redialed repeatedly. The phone rang, but Brandon never answered. His parents searched frantically that night, calling friends and neighbors. By sunrise, they contacted police. At first, authorities brushed it off, insisting it was normal for a 19-year-old to go missing overnight. But his parents pushed back, knowing this was not like Brandon. Finally, by 6:30 a.m., officers joined the search. They quickly found his car, but it wasn't where Brandon thought he had been. He had been disoriented, likely confused by the dark countryside. Search teams scoured the area. Cadaver dogs tracked his scent through fields, along gravel roads, and toward the Yellow Medicine River. The trail led right to the riverbank, and then stopped. Police dragged the river for weeks. Nothing. No clothes. No backpack. No body. Theories began to form. Did Brandon fall into the river that night? Perhaps. But the river had been thoroughly searched many times over. If he had drowned, why wasn't anything ever found? Others believed he may have succumbed to exposure in the fields, hidden by tall grass or farmland. But again, nothing turned up in years of searches. Foul play was considered, but there was no evidence of an attacker, and Brandon's last words suggest a sudden accident rather than an ambush. What makes this case so haunting is the phone call itself. Brandon was describing his surroundings in real time. Then, sudden silence. Did he trip? Did he slip into water? Or did he see something, or someone? Brandon's parents, Annette and Brian Swanson, have never stopped searching. In their grief, they also fought for change. They pushed for the creation of the Brandon's Law, requiring police in Minnesota to act immediately when an adult is reported missing, rather than waiting 24 hours. Their son's disappearance changed state policy. But Brandon's case remains unsolved. No body. No evidence. Just a young man walking in the dark, a chilling last phrase, and silence that has lasted for over 15 years. One phone call. One night. And one of the most haunting mysteries in America. These aren't ghost stories. What do you think happened to Brandon? They're real. And they remain unsolved. For disappearances. For families left with nothing but questions. Which one chills you the most?